All right, so I'd like to welcome everyone to the 974th monthly meeting of the Amateur Telescope Makers of Boston. Today's meeting is going to be sort of an atypical special event. We're just going to have a bunch of our members recount their stories for all the various eclipse chasing that went on across the club. I know we've had members, from one end of the eclipse to the other, all across the country. So it'll be interesting to hear their tales. That looks familiar.
Time for the observing report. Glenn is not with us tonight. He is at the Townsend town meeting where they're voting on a new lighting ordinance. So we felt it was important for him to be there tonight for that. And I agreed with him 100%. So this is just a little graphic just to, to recognize that we're all here to talk about the eclipse tonight. But I have the observer's report. I'll try to keep it brief so we can press forward. If you click the next slide, please. So here's, this is Glenn's, he found this. Comparing what you see during an eclipse to the darkness at night is like comparing the ocean to a teardrop. And again, I said this last month and it's still with me. I don't think it's possible to fully explain a total solar eclipse to someone who's never seen one. Because it's not just what you see in the sky, it's everything you experience that's going on around you in the moments that lead up to totality and during totality, and even afterwards. It really is an experience that I hope everyone, at least once in their lifetime, gets to enjoy. I've seen two now, Mario, you've got about an hour and a half in the moon's shadow, right?
I got 63 minutes, 41 seconds.
Okay. I got like 4 minutes and 20 seconds, and I'm working on it. Right? That's okay. And you'll hear some stories from.
You got time to catch up.
There's plenty of time, of course. You'll hear more about all this later. So next slide, please. So I decided to go down this. Oh, it didn't come out really well. My X's didn't come out well. Instead of a lot of words, I just put this up here. If you want to look at Mercury, I gave it a yellow check, very low in the morning skies just before sunrise. Venus, less than 7. Those are red X, unobservable, less than 7 degrees away from the sun. Now that's for most people. Of course, I'll be looking at it until I can. Let's see. I don't want to. We on the work party day. Rob Strain brought a new telescope up, and we collimated that for him. And then I managed to find Venus in the daytime. And I will say it was a bit of a challenge. And it wasn't. I was going to blame it on the clouds, but I finally spotted it in his 8550 finder scope. And it was the tiniest little speck of a star. I can't even believe I spotted it. That's the only way we were able to find it. It's very difficult to observe when it gets this close to the sun. If you try it, please be careful. Less than 7 degrees, now that's dangerous water.
Especially when it's leading the sun, too.
Right, it's preceding the sun. So if you've got a telescope on a fixed mount, that sun's not far down behind it, right? Just a few minutes away. So be very, very, very careful. And I think it's on June 4th that the sun actually occults a Venus. Venus will be directly behind the sun and totally unobservable. Mars, I gave it a yellow check just because it's up in the sky at sunrise. It's magnitude 1.1, 4 arc seconds, really difficult to observe. Jupiter's in solar conjunction. Saturn is a good one in the east, about 20 degrees above the horizon. At sunrise, the rings are only tilted about 3 degrees to our line of sight. Now, they're actually less than 3 degrees. We have 2 ring plane passages in March of 2025 and November of 2025. The March one will be a challenge because it'll be pretty close to the sun, but the November one should be pretty cool to look at. And then Uranus is in solar conjunction, and Neptune is low in the sky in the morning. Anyway, all those planets make a nice lineup in the morning skies, but there you have it. So next slide, please. So again, the variable star of the month is T Corona Borealis, and I might make this the variable star of the month until one of us or all of us spot it. I said to Glenn, what we should do? We should offer a prize. I mean, we should, as an inspiration to get people to go out in the cold night or the hot night and actually, make an observation of this particular star. I've been doing it with binoculars. A quick look, if it's there, it's up. If it's there, it's not up. If I see it, it's up. But I said to Glenn, what we should do is we should give away some fabulous prize for the first person in the club to report it on the announced, list. So if you see it up, you send an announced email to everybody. Just say T Corona Borealis is up. And then Glenn and I will figure.
First to the AV associate get credit, then to us.
Well, okay,
Well, announce is moderated, so it's not the best way to get it done.
it's not? What's the best way?
Discuss first,
Oh,
and then we can
discuss.
post to announce.
Okay, discuss, go to discuss. First person, Glenn and I will come up with a fabulous prize. I used to say that to the kids when I was teaching middle school. You'll get a fabulous prize. And they finally wised up to me, like, yeah, what's your idea of a fabulous prize? How about a cool eraser to go on top of the pencil? Fabulous prize.
We have ATMoB pins.
ATMoB pen, you're really lucky.
Rick, what's the magnitude now where it's not?
I want to say it's around 11th magnitude, 10th or 11th magnitude. And it'll jump up quickly to hopefully 3rd or 2nd magnitude.
Wow.
So you'll be able to see it in the sky. It'll be about as bright as, this is Gemma. And so it'll be about as bright. So I know, Christine, we were looking at some faint stars, these little faint stars at the clubhouse the other night, but it's right in there. So anyway, that's going to be the variable star of the month for a while. So get used to that, because it's predicted to go into outburst sometime between now and September. We'll see. I say to Glenn, look, we only have 2 data points, right? 1866, 1946. That's only two. That's really not enough to describe a trend, right? So that's like the Red Sox winning 2 games in
different seasons.
All right, so next slide. So, and here's the 1946 outburst. So you can see how it just jumps up, and then it kind of gets quiet, and it gets up a little higher and stuff like that. Anyway, apparently they've seen this has already happened, or is happening, this little dip. Right. So this is what's gotten Glenn all excited about this stuff. Anyway, we'll see. All right, next thing. So the double star of the month is Gamma Leonis. You all know where it is in the main, 2.2 and 3.6, with a K and a G star. They're 4.8 arc seconds apart. That's a little bit of a challenge, but with a decent scope, you should be able to pick one up and really enjoy it. It's a beautiful, beautiful double star. And so, if you've forgotten about how pretty double stars can be, that's why I'm offering one each month, just to sort of inspire you to go out and look at some of this stuff. They're beautiful in small refractors, if you've got one. So, but they're great in any sort of scope you want. And while I'm on that, Glenn and I were talking about setting up soon a member event at the clubhouse, sort of like a little star party, and ideally have people bring relatively small scopes. And we put together a list of about 20 things, of almost like a scavenger hunt. No pressure, just come up, observe, and if you can find 10 of them, that's great. If you can find only 3 of them, that's great. And it'd just be nice to gather people together, almost like a small scope star party. And if you want, if Steve's up there, he's got a nice 18-inch scope. We can play with a 25-inch if you want, but I'm going to probably bring a 3 or 4-inch refractor, just to see what I can do with that. Just like the good old days, right? Anyway, so stay tuned for more information about that. All right, next slide. So Hickson 68 is the challenge of the month. It's a little bit off the beaten path, but it's worth going there. It's the box. We look at it all the time up at the clubhouse when Steve and I observe. It's the springtime, the sky is filled with galaxies. And as the pictures you'll see in a second, go ahead, next slide please, will show that this is a really nice, pretty cluster of galaxies. So this picture was taken by Doug Paul. Doug, you're here, right? You want to say anything about it?
Oh, that's 4 hours with a 6-inch aperture.
Okay.
The bright yellow thing on the right is a very bright star.
It's easier to see than you think. How long did you say it was? 4 hours?
Yes.
Yeah, these are pretty bright galaxies. Well, some of them are. All right, next slide.
4 hours to get things like the arms of the...
Yeah. Oh, sure. And there's that. Now you can see the star. Mario, this is your image.
Sometimes the screens up top are clearer.
That's a really nice picture. Thank you. Was that with you during too?
This is with the 32-inch. It's 3 hours, red, green, blue, and luminous.
Real nice. And I think there's one more by Mark Helm. Mark, are you with us tonight? Okay. But you get the idea. It's a very lovely, compact group of galaxies.
Definitely.
And I think the next one is Glenn's sketch. And he'd probably have us bounce back and forth, but I'm not going to do that tonight. So he was using a 10-inch f5 reflector. He had some pretty dark skies back in the day. So, as with galaxies, with any faint fuzzies, the quality of your sky is really gonna determine what you're gonna see here. Galaxies typically require a bit of aperture.
Back in the day being last April.
Back in the day.
10 years ago, yeah.
I didn't pay attention to that. Usually it's got schedules that are like 50 years old. All right, so back in the day, when light pollution was less than it is now. Like 2 weeks ago. I just cut and paste. I didn't actually read the slides. All right, next slide. And the June challenge is NGC 6118. And Doug Paul, last month you said that you weren't sure how visual observers were going to make out with this one because it's really faint. And Roger Iverser has said to me, he believes that this of the Herschel 400, this is the hardest object in the Herschel 400. It's in a relatively easy spot in the sky to find Ophiuchus. These are the Yed stars. But I haven't even tried to look at it yet. And I know from Framingham, back in the day.
We started it.
I know. I could have probably seen this, but I'm not so sure. Back in April, I probably could have seen it. And there's a picture. Doug, that's your picture, right?
Yes, that's 5 hours now with the,
Okay.
to get that little bit.
Okay. It looks like a tiny galaxy too. It's small.
Yeah, it's a big dead center. If you-
Yeah. All right, what's the next slide? I forget. Oh, and here's the clubhouse schedule, May 10th and 11th, May 31st and June 1st, June 7th and 8th, and June 28th and 29th. And we have members on volunteers ready to go on those evenings, weather permitting. While we're on the clubhouse, I'll just say a little more about the mirror making. That continues. Phil had 5 people grinding last night. So we've got some people polishing, some people grinding. We've got a bunch of people waiting in the queue for space to open up. We keep talking about, we have a Foucault tester, there's a bath interferometer. We've also got the Paul Vallely 10-inch flat. It's a perforated flat. I would love to set that up as a double pass autocollimation test. And we armed with those 3 test methods, we can really chuck out some pretty good stuff. So that is an ongoing process, and I'm happy to report Mario finished his.
One's completed.
One's completed. I finished mine, but not at the clubhouse, but down at Dick Parker's workshop. So that's 2 of us since the fall have completed mirrors. So
Congrats.
keep up the good work. Yeah.
Head over to our main event. So we've got 11 out of 10 speakers. I made a logging error, so I accidentally overbooked. I didn't want to bump someone out. So we've got a big list of names. I think we're just going to jump straight into it because we'll be strapped for time. Everyone will have about 5 minutes, and I really want to try and not go too far over that, or else we'll be here till Friday.
So make sure you let people know. So I like, at the end of the talks, I like to get all the speakers together in one area so I can take one photo.
Yeah, we can bring the lights up and maybe do it at the front or so. Yeah. Sure. All right, so the first speaker will be Mario. So I've got all the files here in advance, so we should be able to jump straight in. And you can either use this pen to go backwards and forwards. Sure.
Thank you.
You can either use the forward and back buttons. Okay. And if you want to use the microphone, I think it should just work. Here we go. All right.
Thank you. Too bad Fred Wood doesn't come here anymore, because I'd like to start off with a 20-minute rant about meteorologists. This was planned for quite a while. Initially, I was going to go to Mazatlan with Jay Paskoff, but his untimely death changed that, and I ended up joining back up with the ATM trip. And it was a good trip. We all had a great time. A number of people in this room were there. We got this banner made. Springfield Telescope Makers used my photo, so I had to get the banner. Oops.
The down button.
Down button. There we go. So initially, we were staying in Bernie. It's spelled Burn, but Texans don't know how to talk, so Bernie, Texas, down here. actually down here, right off 10. And we were gonna go to Kerrville, right behind a place called the Lake House. I got to know the owner quite well, and it was a fabulous place, but the clouds the night before were predicted to cover that. So we ended up going up to Junction, which is about as far as I could go to get further from the clouds. And it worked out. In fact, the morning was spectacular. Unfortunately, during the eclipse time, we got quite a bit of cloudiness. I got a couple of frames, but nothing like what I wanted to get. What happened?
I can run the slides for you if you want. Maybe that thing's acting up.
Okay, so this was my setup. It's a 90mm refractor. I can take it on a plane, Skywatcher, and I built this. In fact, right now, if you want to get a flip mirror, they're like $550. I got this part of it at Cellophane for $10, and we'll lay the milling machine, make connectors for the camera and an eyepiece, so I can just flip back and forth.
How much is the lathe and the milling machine cost?
Scrap metal price, actually. So anyways, that worked out pretty well. So partial phase, you've all seen that, so I'm going to skip quickly. And here's my one relatively good frame. A lot of this, some of this is in a corona and some of this is just cirrus clouds. The problem is we had a low cloud that covered up quite a bit of it, which is unfortunate. But anyways, that's what we've got. And this is Nasmus here? Oh, there it is in the back. I used his subs and did a quick stack in Affinity program and got this. But Bert used the same frames and got a fabulous picture, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but you'll see it. It's the same frames, the contrast is fantastic. And that'll be the one I use. And here is Kevin McCarthy. He was on the trip, but he decided to bail out and ended up in southern Quebec. This is his setup. And I promised him I'd show him views, which was part of the trip originally. These are pictures he took with a 90mm refractor. Bailey's beads, diamond ring. And here is a full with the backlighting of the moon, Earthshine. Wow. And this is third contact with Bailey's beads, nice prominences. And, come on. All right, and after the eclipse, I took some photos. This is my entire family there. I had 5 of my 7 grandkids along. 2 of them were 1-year-olds, so my oldest daughter didn't come, but she ended up going to Maine. She probably got the best view of all. She brought the 1-year-olds with her. Here's the entire group. My grandkids looking at the sun. And this is what we had almost the entire time until eclipse time. So location, okay. And I'm just going to go through this quickly. These are people on the trip. Will recognize yourself. This is not moving very well. Okay, here we go.
Feel like I can hit the buttons here?
All right, just, yeah, maybe I'll do it, so just go faster. This one here?
Yep.
Okay, so here's Al. It's Ben. Okay, some of the organizers. There's Peter Velo. There's Bert, and that's a good lead off to the next segment, which will be Bert and Nasmus. You know, it's kind of funny because, I think that, okay, that's it. It's kind of funny because the weather ended up being exact opposite of what was predicted. Texas would have been about 70% chance of seeing it, and Maine was going to be about 3%. And you know what happened? Texas was cloudy, and Maine had the best spot in the entire country. So that's why, don't trust meteorologists.
Thank you, Maria. Perfect time. All right, next we have Nasmus. So you can either use this, there is a bit of a delay because of the zoom,
Or the arrow.
or the arrows, left, right.
Got it. Hey everyone, just like a lot of people, I planned on going to Texas. We planned this out years ago. We had our Airbnb booked as soon as they got listed, and on the week of the eclipse, we canceled everything and we went up to upstate New York. And this is not a picture from upstate New York, because on the day of the eclipse, we look outside and it's cloudy. So we got in the car and we drove east into Vermont, and we ended up in Richford, Vermont. We didn't know where we were until the end, until we were leaving, because my GPS wouldn't work. And we found a park there. We found out it was called Davis Park, and I set up there. So this is my gear. From the, I'll go from top to bottom. I have an 1860 ED, which is a small refractor. That ended up giving me my best images. It's a 60mm f6 telescope. It was on my Solar Quest mount, which is amazing because it just tracked the sun all the way until diamond ring, and then it thought the diamond ring was the sun, so it went off center, but then it started tracking, which was great. I used my 75 to 300mm kit lens, which is on the far right. I used that in 2017 as well. And I had that on my Skywatcher AZ GTI all-fast mount, and that tracked beautifully. And that used a Canon T2i, and my AT60 is a Canon T5i. And then on the very left side is my 14mm Samyang on my Canon T2i, which is hydrogen alpha modded, but I did white balance before that, so that all the colors look right. And they were all controlled using a software called SetNC, a solar eclipse timer and controller. I tested it very thoroughly over the last year, and it worked beautifully for 2 of my setups. I ended up using just an intervalometer for my wide field setup because we had to travel, I had to leave some stuff behind. And an honorary mention for my hydrogen alpha setup that I had to leave behind because my in-laws also needed to go in the car with us, so I had to leave them behind or my telescope behind. So the images were, the view was mind-blowing, and the prominence that we saw, the naked eye prominence, it blew my mind. It looked like a dead pixel in the sky, and it made me question whether we're in a virtual reality or something. It was amazing. I caught a bunch of Bailey's beads. I think this is my best one, followed by a diamond ring as well. And this is all with my AT60, my 60mm setup. And Bert, if you want to come up. I shared my subs with Bert and Mario for their processing as well, and Bert did an amazing job here.
So many thanks to Naz for letting me use his wonderful subframes. So I used his exposures from really short, I think it was a 2000 was the shortest one, all the way down to 1 second, and combined them with my HDR processing that I had used for several eclipses now. And this is the result of what I suppose I would have seen in binoculars if I had actually seen anything at all. But you can see, and I think Naz has better pictures of the details here next, so I won't take much time, but you can see a lot of really interesting sort of turbulence close to the disk of the sun. And then the thing I always like to try to do is how far can we pull detail of the streamers, out in all directions. And finally, we have a couple of stars that Naz recorded. Now I'm blanking on what they were, but they're in Pisces.
Zeta Piscean.
Zeta, I think it's Zeta Piscean 88, I think is what that one is. And this is like a 5th magnitude star with a 6th magnitude companion, and this is a 6th magnitude star.
Thank you. And the drift of my solar quest kind of went off far enough that I was also able to catch the Sungrazer Comet Soho 5008. It's not on any of the images because it's on the very edge, but I was really happy with how it came out as well. So this one is my edit. So this, I used the pellet method that was described in Sky and Telescope in the late 90s. I ended up double stacking it, and then I read up on some wavelets that Miroslav Krugmiller, who was one of the leading solar eclipse chasers in the world, he wrote about. I applied some of his techniques into this image to try and get more detail out of the solar prominences, and this is my results.
How many subs, Naz?
So this is, I'm gonna say 10, so it's from 1/2000th of a second all the way up to 1 second, as Bert said. I did go up to 4 seconds, but we had high clouds and the 4 seconds just looked completely washed out.
Can I say 2 words?
Yeah, of course.
So I think it's fascinating to look at how the magnetic field lines are shown around some of these prominences, and just all the, and this thing out here, all the texture and structure in there.
Wild. Thank you. And so this is just a composite of the, I was lucky enough to be able to see the whole thing. And I have a video. It's just a quick time lapse, 17 seconds. Just gonna make sure it shows the full res.
Cool.
That is incredible. Thank you so much.
Why, I have a question. Why is the, that prominence appear to be growing at the very end of the, that sequence?
Because this could be exposure coming out.
Because the moon moves across the sky.
Exposing more.
It's being uncovered by the moon. Thank you, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you. Okay. Good.
All right, next up we have Rich Nugent.
Put it up at me again. Whoops. I guess I'll use that. I don't know.
If you like.
Where do I click?
You can hit the horizontal button.
Okay, well, that's me.
Or you can use this.
So here's the crowd. We wound up observing the eclipse from Moscow, Maine. Originally, our plan was to go to Texas. My daughter-in-law, about a year and a half ago, said too much time away from school for the kids, too far to travel, too much money. It's Texas. She didn't want to go. So she bowed out. And then my middle son bowed out. And then I said to Julie, where I was going to be with Julie Kaufman, and I said, Julie, I'd rather be up in Maine with the grandkids under cloudy skies than down here in Texas all by myself to see the eclipse. So I bowed out of Texas. And as you know the story, it turned out remarkably well. But you know, as I made my preparations for this eclipse, and frustration and angst and just everything would overwhelm me, I just kept saying to myself, Rich, it's gonna be cloudy. What are you worried about? Right? It just didn't matter. So that took a lot of the pressure off the plans. We were originally going to go to Jackman, Maine. The idea was we were gonna stay at my sister-in-law and her husband's camp in Oxford, Maine, go up 201 to Jackman the day of the eclipse with everybody in at least a couple of cars, probably 3. The more I heard about the horror stories, about the predictions of what Jackman was going to be like, as far as no food, no gas, probably no porta potties, 1 tow truck in the area, muddy roads, 20 to 30,000 people. We had to keep in mind that these 4 little tiny astronomers were going to be with us. And we all remembered, and they don't remember it. Logan will tell you, my 7-year-old grandson will tell you, that he's now seen 2 eclipses. Because he was with us in 2017. He was only a year and 2 weeks old. So while he did experience an eclipse, he certainly doesn't remember it. But we remember the traffic in Illinois and how long it took us to get back to base camp. And the one who especially remembers it is, where is she? She's in the middle here. Listen, right here. She was pregnant with this child right here. And she remembers that traffic remarkably well. And so she was like, look, can we just not be in 10 hours of traffic? So the plans were really fluid, literally up until the morning of the eclipse. I had been spending many hours going up and down Route 201 on Google Maps, figuring out where we might be able to see this eclipse without going to Jackman, looking at totality, the time of totality, and what we were going to be able to do. The bottom line was that most of the places north of Moscow, Maine, were either too small, inaccessible, or there'd be 0 things for those children to do in the hours we were waiting for the eclipse. So after much deliberation, we settled on the Moscow Elementary School parking lot. It was lovely. There was a playground in the back. There was a basketball court. There was a field they could kick a ball in. I brought my own porta potty with a little tent. They could go to the bathroom if they needed to. Turns out the Moscow Elementary School was open for business, not for business, but they were open as a fundraiser. There were about maybe 200 people in the parking lot. And so they had their bathrooms open. It was lovely. I took a pretty big hit on totality. Instead of 3 minutes and 20 seconds, I was only able to come up with 1 minute and 52 seconds. But at the end of the day, 4 kids under 7 and under, and 9 adults. We're not all in that picture. Yeah, maybe we are all are. I don't know. 9 adults. We're pretty happy at the end of the day. And so things worked out pretty well for us. The traffic was not bad. We had to travel about 8 miles back to the Airbnb we had found, which, by the way, was in the path of totality, but only 1 minute and 4 seconds. And so I said to everybody involved, can we just try to get just maybe a little bit more? Can we just move a little bit further north? And so that's what we did. About 20 to 30 minutes to get back. Everybody was so nice in the traffic. Sure, come on in. I'll let you go. It was crazy because they were all so euphoric after seeing what they had witnessed, right? It was amazing. We all get to see it. I don't know how many pictures I brought with me. There are 4 out of the 5 grandkids. The little one, Claire, is only a year old, and she stayed out in California with Mom. Emmy was having a little bit of trouble with her eclipse glasses, but we got her pretty straightened out. And Annie, the redhead, she just doesn't know. I like this picture. Probably better on the monitors up above, maybe not, because here, this is me. There I am right there. I've got a little Canon camera, I'm just taking pictures. And my pictures are just like memory shots. They're not anything like what you guys are capable of doing. I had an ST90 and an ST80 set up with filters. I did take one look through the ST90 for a few seconds during totality. I've been doing visual astronomy for pretty close to 60 years. And I gotta tell you, that eclipse, that prominence, those crystal neon pink prominences, and that eclipse through that chunky 90 mm telescope, that has to be the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, ever. It's just like, I'm just getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It was spectacular. That's what it looked like standing in the parking lot. I love this picture. There's Venus, you can see Venus in the phone wires. This was, my daughter-in-law Liz took this picture. That's what it looked like. Very lovely. Oh my gosh, it's just great. So here's the diamond ring. This is, again, the Canon camera with a 250 mm lens. Click, 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 click. I'll just hold the button down. They're JPEGs, so most of the information is buried in the overexposure. I was gonna try and shoot RAW plus JPEG, but the camera wouldn't run fast enough. I wanted to get the diamond ring, because I had missed it in 2017. And so about 10 seconds, I had a little app running, 10 seconds to totality. I set that camera up and I just pushed the button and held it. And took probably 50 pictures over the next 15 seconds to make sure I got that shot. A little bit more of the diamond ring. You can see some of the prominences. Again, these are just memory shots, so they're not too good, but a little bit inner corona, a little bit outer corona. The only thing I forgot to do was reset the shutter exposure to get the 3rd contact diamond ring, but I think this kind of came out pretty well. You can see some of the streamers. That's a hot pixel over here. That's just something that needs to be taken out of there. But that's it. We had a great time. I can't wait for the next one. Thanks.
That's great, the whole family got to see it. That's a lifetime,
It was worth
memory.
it was worth a hit on totality.
Absolutely. So next up we have Bruce. So you can space bar or arrows or these 2 up and down. Okay. The microphone. I've got a timer going here.
Do we need a microphone? Hopefully not. So, so many of you know my good friend Bobak Tafreshi. He's a National Geographic photographer and explorer and storyteller, and he runs a project. So let's see. There, he runs a project, directs a project for National Geographic called the Life at Night Atlas. And he had asked me, he had teased me last year about eclipse. We've actually done a couple of projects. All these little specks here are fireflies in a forest in Tennessee. But he's been doing fireflies, and we're going to be doing sea turtles and flying squirrels. But we had talked about doing bats because there's a lot of bats in Texas. It's the largest bat caves are in Texas, the largest few bat caves are in Texas. And I waited and waited and waited and hadn't heard anything, and my in-laws live in Cleveland, Ohio, which is also on the center line, so my wife and I made plans to drive out there and spend time with them. Time was dwindling, but then on March 15th, Bobak contacted me and said, okay, I just got funding for my project. The reason it took so long is that National Geographic is partnering with ABC News for a broadcast called Eclipse Across America, and we're gonna be part of the photography team doing that. And if anybody did stay home or tuned in, this video's on YouTube, but this was David Muir, I think is his name, hosted it, and Robin Robbins, and Robin, forget what is it?
Roberts.
Roberts, right. They hosted this, it started about 1 in the afternoon, and what they had done was there were sites all across, starting in Mazatlan, Mexico, going to Niagara Falls, and actually going all the way up to Halton, Maine, and they had representatives in all different parts. And Bobak was the on-camera science reporter for this. My job on this whole thing, so first of all, I shouldn't mention that my wife was a little disappointed that I wasn't going to Cleveland. But she drove there by herself anyways, and I'm happy that she did.
Has she come home since?
Come on now, you're using up my minutes. So anyways, on March 15th, okay, so Bobak and I arrived on April 4th. We flew in together. We had reservations from the 4th to the 11th of April, so we arrived several days early. And our first stop, right after checking into our hotel, was the Frio Bat Caves. And this is in Concan, Texas, Uvalde County. The guy on the right is Bain Walker, and he, for about the last 25 years, has been the superintendent or the lead tour guide at Frio Bat Flight. This is it's a pretty cool place, and yes, that is a gun on his belt, which is not normal for Texas, but Frio was kind of cool. So at night, as it was getting night, I started taking pictures, photographs. These were videos, but I decided to make this simple. Frio Bat Cave is a maternity bat cave. These are Mexican free-tailed bats, and after mating, the males go off to their cave and the females go off to their cave, have their babies and nurse their babies until the next season. This is a maternity cave, about somewhere between 10 and 12 million bats in this cave. And you can see some photographs of them flying around. These photographs don't really show what it's like when you're standing outside the cave and you're feeling the wind from the wings as they're circling around you and coming out. And it takes about 2 to 3 hours for them to come out of the cave. So this is just constantly going on and on and on. Rush hour.
Are these insect-eating bats?
Excuse me?
Are these insect-eating?
So these are yes, they are. Glad you asked that, because that's the next thing I was going to mention. So Mexican free-tailed bats do eat insects. They can travel or fly up to 100 miles an hour. And in this part of the country, they tend to feed on insects that are flying in on airstreams from Mexico, from the south. And they go up to about 10,000 foot elevation, which is where this moth that they're particularly interested in goes. So at night, the females will go out, they'll feed, they'll come back in just as it starts getting bright again, and come back and feed their babies. What's interesting also is that the bats are about 300 bats per square foot on the walls of the cave. When they have babies and each mother has one, there are about 600 bats per square foot on the walls or ceilings of the cave. The bats go out and feed, and then they come back, and through the sound and the smell, they find their own baby. So I thought that was pretty amazing. So at night, we went to a different cave that night, and this is called the Stewart Bat Cave. And those look like kind of funny bats. Let me explain why. A bat flying by you at 50 or 60 or 70 miles an hour at night, it's very tough to catch with a camera. So what we did was we used a light And the light we used was, it was actually a lume cube of mine. It's LED and it's variable brightness. And what I learned is that when you vary the brightness of this, it's called pulse width modulation. It actually flashes the light. If the light's brighter, then the on sequences are longer. If it's not as bright, then the on frequencies is shorter. But what it does is it makes a very fast strobe. So what you see here are bats in flight caught in this strobe. And this is like a 1/100th of a second exposure. I've got many, many, many of these. My job, back at the Frio Bat Cave the next day, my job was to find out, oh, let me explain the cave. So the cave opens up, it's about at least a half a mile deep, but the opening is a huge cavern, and there are 2 holes in the ceiling, basically must have been cave-ins at one point. So the plan was to set up cameras so that we could catch the solar eclipse coming through one of the holes in the cave ceiling. My job was on April 7th, the day before, was to go in right around eclipse time, around 1:30 for us, and figure out where we had to be. So the marks on the ground that I have here in the photograph is 121 on the right, 126 to the left of that, and so on and so forth. And right about where that danger sign is, was where we set up a couple of cameras. I think I have a picture of some of the cameras here, yep. So there's the 2 cameras set up on the left. And then we also set up cameras outside. There's Bobak setting up one of the cameras outside. That's a post shot day before. I also give credit, I did not take all these photographs. If they're not mine, then the photographs are stamped. Taylor McKay was a contract videographer, and he was fantastic. He had video, he had drones, he had all kinds of stuff. National Geographic flew in addition to the cameras that Taylor brought, and then we had Austin Mann and Bobak and I, in addition to all the cameras we brought, which was basically the full trunk of my car, Nat Geo sent in another 300 pounds worth of gear. We had everything. We had GoPros, we had 360s, we had more drones, we had all kinds of stuff. We had 100 megapixel medium format cameras, Hasselblad and Fujifilm. It was just amazing. Okay, so unfortunately, so we were broadcast, like I said, we were broadcast all day, started at 1 in the afternoon. And this was our forecast. So right about where that shadow was shown was where we were. Just east of Del Rio. This woman on the right, I believe, was in Del Rio. No, she wasn't, I'm sorry, she was not. But we were not having good weather. We knew about this days ahead of time, but we were not allowed to move. Okay, it was a lot of prep time for this. This is our crew. On the left is ABC News producer, Chad Cohen. There's me, Bobak Tafreshi. That next one is Taylor McKay, who's the videographer, Austin Mann, who is an excellent photographer. If you've ever gone by an Apple iPhone billboard or seen a building with a photograph of like a full-length building photograph taken by iPhone, chances are Austin was the one that took that photograph. It's really good. And the right is Nate Luna, who is a cameraman and a technical, he ran like the Starlink link and everything.
Go faster on this telephone.
Yeah, so we had a little bit of a gear there. This our rental car. I'm setting up, I've got Vix and I polar mounted. I'm setting up the camera is, let's see, it's also a Solar Quest. Interesting story, it does not track when it's cloudy. And so that's my Canon R6 with a 100 to 500 millimeter lens. Some of the tripods we had. And so what happened was we were totally socked in. We were really socked in. And about 10 seconds before totality started, we got a break in the clouds. My Solar Quest mount was not tracking. We didn't have clear enough skies for me to get an accurate polar alignment on the Polari tracker. So I grabbed the Nikon Z8 camera with 800 millimeter lens. I loosened the ball mount and I pointed the camera up and I manually took these shots.
Not bad. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, great.
I share credit with Bobak. because I told him I would. No, let me put no, I share credit with Bob because he told me I have to.
That was handheld?
Yeah.
They were on the tripod,
Yeah.
but the whole ball mount was loose. Some of these photographs were on the National Geographic homepage for the day of the eclipse, the night of the eclipse, and the day afterward.
Awesome.
And so on the right is my test shot the day before about where the sun should be. On the left is the actual photo of the totality, so I was pretty close as far as where the camera went. And these are just a couple of stills from the live broadcast. If you search Eclipse Across America on YouTube, you can find this video. It's about 3 hours long. Bobak, again, was the science commentator for the whole thing. A couple of guys, this is inside the cave. This is actually the day before, and these two guys on the right were the photo technicians from Nat Geo. They got sent home the day before because Nat Geo said it's going to be cloudy there anyways. They sent them to Arkansas to help film the wedding of about 300 people that was happening during totality. And that might be it.
So what did the bats do?
The bats.
The bats.
Go out?
So I got tons of stuff about bats, but I thought that you guys would probably, did the bats. The bats did not come out. It wasn't really expected. We actually had it kind of on good word that they weren't. First of all, it was really cloudy, like very cloudy, like dark cloudy.
How cloudy was it?
And the bats are about half a mile, or could be up to a half a mile inside the cave. So chances are they did not detect the temperature or the light change. However, barn swallows also live in this cave, and the barn swallows, which are usually out during the day when it started getting dark, they came back in. Well, I'm talking like 10,000 barn swallows. And then also there was a beehive just inside the cave, in this cavern where these guys are. There was a beehive in the rock, and they were buzzing all the time we were in there during the day. And we had a camera on them, and they totally quieted down during the eclipse.
Thank you.
Awesome. Sounds like a wild trip.
Was that 5 minutes?
13.
Hey, Bruce.
Next up is Ben.
It's good.
Oh, I could have done that.
So the left and right buttons, or up and down here. You have either these,
Or up and down here. Okay, up and down.
and the microphone if you like.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Thank you, good evening. Most of you, I just know your name from actually reading the newsletter every month and following the discuss in the mornings and all that. And I appreciate all the work that this club has done. Mario is the first that brought me to my first eclipse in 1991, which I'll show you something about. My story is a little bit like Rich. I made a commitment to Burlington, Vermont a year ago for family reasons, and I said, that's where I'm gonna bet. And I rolled the dice, and basically we drove up with everything I got, and we set up the night before and all that. So what you see here is I was in Williston, Vermont, just a little bit to the right of Burlington. This is just a few minutes before totality. It looks cloudier than it is. You see the halo, which means obviously there are high-level ice clouds, but other than that, it was a filtered view is what the weatherman would call it at that time. The night before was beautifully clear. I had scoped out with Google Maps, like probably all of you do, that behind my hotel there was a dead-end street with open public parking with a beautiful view of the south and the southwest, and I decided that's where I was gonna go. And I basically set up the night before, and I'll show you that in a minute. But let's see if I can move this. Maybe I should lose the set sideways or?
Yep, to the right.
To the right. Okay, just a very quick, there was a great article in Sky and Telescope about the Saros series. And I hadn't realized that the 1971 was really the first one that I saw as a 15-year-old. And not only that, but we published something out of that. So I took these pictures with my Agfa Clack, which was a wonderful camera because it actually had a bulb setting. And it actually had a shutter release. So this was my 15-year-old with an Asahi Pentax 60 millimeter, and took these photos, and kind of that got me started. Obviously, it was not total, but it was the same sorrow. So there's a little bit of a symmetry there that I found was fun. These are the two other eclipses that I was really lucky to see. The first one, Mario, you brought us to La Paz, and that was my equipment at the time. And you know, it was all manual and film. And nowadays, everything, at least I had everything computerized with the SET&C, which is fantastic. It's the only reason I was able to actually see the eclipse this time that well. And it was, Rich, like you said, beautiful. It was the most beautiful thing in the sky that you could see. But basically, this is what I did with both of these. These were processed with the pellet method at the time. I would think one of the first ones, or early ones to use it after I read about it. I have not processed my current crop with any of this kind of sharpening yet. So what you see is basically raw material. The night before, here's my equipment. Everything fit in the car on the left there. So as much as could fit in the car, except for my wife and I. And then I set up over there, and beautiful, empty street. So much so that I could take a picture of the comet the night before. So basically everything was tracking, and with tape on the ground, I knew that I was going to be tracking. This mount is a very good mount. So that was the commitment I made, and by that time the weather was looking pretty good, except that there were clouds coming from New York. There was this moment where we didn't know whether they would just come just before totality or whether we would save, and in fact, as I was breaking down afterwards, the clouds came in like an hour after the eclipse had finished. They really came in.
Perfect.
So that was actually a very nice eclipse. These are shots by my son-in-law with iPhone. But on the right, you see the very, very sharp umbra, which was clearly visible partly because of that cloud cover, I think. And then what you see in this is totality with Venus over here and Jupiter way up on the left top there, a very tiny spot. It's amazing what the iPhone can catch. I had a Canon camera trying to take these same kinds of pictures, did not catch those two planets. So something about the iPhone really is good. I have a whole series of stuff which I haven't processed yet. There's something about film that was nicer than digital, which is the reflections. Those of you who have taken with a digital camera, you know that when you get the right exposure, there's going to be a little reflection here. I don't know how to get rid of that except maybe with a totally different filter.
Tilt your filter.
Yeah, sorry?
Tilt the filter.
I tried that and maybe had to tilt it even more. But I'm gonna fix it by using the low exposures and just.
So you don't get that with film?
No, because it's the reflection of the CMOS going back to the glass and coming back. So I never got that. You can overexpose with film. You just got an overexposed orange thing. These are that orange filter, whatever it was. Yeah. But so I got this series, which I think is pretty nice. The best part I got are these very close-up series of. This would be the beginning diamond ring. And I'll just step through this for you. See, this SET&C thing is just taking pictures. And I forgot about it. I didn't even know what it was doing. And it was just amazing that you could actually see naked eye, all that, talk to your friends and all that. And it continued to go along, and I was lucky that the focus was good.
And you got chromosphere there.
Well, even better. It gets the Bailey's beads are very tricky because when you're so closely exposed, like they're there, but they're,
Nice.
okay? I mean, the chromosphere was amazing. That to me, what stood out, you'll see the ending chromosphere is even more amazing, but this is the beginning one. This is somewhere in the middle, and I'm not gonna show you all the various exposures, but I have them just like now, it's up to 2 minutes, 2 seconds, and there it's blown out. But visually, I never saw the corona be as expansive as it was either in Curacao or in Mexico. It was definitely much more compact, probably not even one radius away or one diameter away, visually. That was my recollection, at least given the cloud that we had at the time. But you see the one at the bottom. This is where it began, becoming such an amazing sight. The chromosphere, that prominence, and I took the binoculars off to kind of confirm that the ancient people could see this, and they did, because it was totally visible with the naked eye. No, you'd know that there are flames coming out of the sun. So that was, I think, pretty amazing. And here again, I mean, there's a little photosphere showing, but somehow it doesn't shine out like a Bailey's beads. Maybe the exposure.
You can see it's overexposed.
Yeah, that's right. What's overexposed? I mean, the Bailey's
White
beads would be
is
here,
not
right?
photos, if that was photosphere,
Okay,
it would be diamond ring light.
well, that's coming the next one, right?
Right, so what you got is overexposed chromosphere, which is
Over,
fine.
this is still chromosphere next?
Yes.
So these are all raw, so I can probably pull it back a little bit and.
Ben, when I was watching this through
Yeah.
through the viewfinder of the camera,
Yeah,
it seemed to
beautiful.
me that Bailey's beads were very quick. They
Uh-huh,
were like, they were.
they were really tiny, like. No, you're already, well, that's all, now you're already getting a diamond ring, you
Right, but
shouldn't be watching. You could see them,
you could see those individual beads break
Yeah,
out
right
and then flood with light.
yeah, then
In a
you
very, very short
take it
amount of
down.
time.
So then,
Yeah.
the white line is still, chromosphere. The
Only
Bailey's
the,
beads is now the photosphere.
only this part here is photosphere then,
Right.
and this is still exposed chromosphere.
Chromosphere.
Yes.
What you have there is Young's stratum.
A what, sorry?
Young's stratum. After the astronomer Young. The lower chromosphere is not the photosphere. What you see there is it's beneath the pink chromosphere. It's called, yeah, there we go. That white that you see there is not the photosphere, that is Young's stratum, which is the lowermost section of the chromosphere before the photosphere shows. The photosphere was unmistakable.
Yes.
That's Young's stratum.
So it's not just an overexposed chromosphere, because.
No, it's not, it's Young's stratum.
referred to as the floctosphere in some papers.
Phosphosphere.
Doesn't matter.
It feels that way. I mean, as I was looking, it doesn't show so well on the screen, but when you look at it, very carefully on the computer, it does look like this is a well-exposed something, and now it's white instead of red, which is, I hear what you're saying. Thank you for that. So that's, and the moon just keeps moving, right? There you go.
Yeah.
And diamond rings were beautiful. And there was a time when you could see flares on 3 sides. And even maybe one at the very top, but it's, I guess, quite uncommon, right? That
Prominence.
Prominence.
People, it's clear, it's prominent.
Sorry, thank you about that. But the prominences on all sides is still a fairly unique thing, I guess. So I think this is
That's a great
a very rough composite. No, it's two sides, right?
You combine them.
I just combined them very roughly, just on top of each other, nothing fancy.
Very nice.
And that's it. And this is just a stack of, average stack of all the corona pictures, and no sharpening, no pellets, nothing. So hopefully that comes in the future. We'll take my inspiration from Nasmus and Bert and others. So thank you for your attention.
Fantastic shots.
Yes. Bernie, when you use it, made another coffee. Still on it. And
Next up, we have Alva.
Well, I'd like to turn this over to my wife, Elizabeth Kubicki, who actually organized this event.
I'm excited about the MIT watch party that I organized at the Egerton Center where I teach. Campus astronomers would be traveling to Totality. I asked for staff who weren't traveling to volunteer to conduct an eclipse viewing event on campus. Inspired by Mayan culture, we called it The Moon Bites the Sun. Marvelyn Higginbottom on the left, who had never used a telescope before, trained with me and was enthralled to be the lead facilitator, making sure that everybody who used the telescope saw the moon biting sun. Sunny Ogram on the right took the photos of spontaneous joy and amazement that I'm going to be sharing now. As well as giving out solar glasses, they encouraged viewers in using 6 telescopes with solar filters, as well as about 6 projection tubes and other hole and aperture or wax paper tubes. Alva designed a solar filter printed over a dozen of them on the ATMoB printer, mounted these on the telescopes and tubes, and these were very helpful to the novice, public, and student viewers. These were the only telescopes being used on campus that day. And they were able, with the finder, to orient toward the sun. My colleagues updated me, I was on a potato field in Maine, via text about how it was going. Hundreds, maybe 700 attended. It was a beautiful spring day, terrific enthusiasm. Marlon said she was channeling Galileo. There was diverse participation. Children, even the dog. And Associate Director of the Egerton Center, Jim Bales, expressed a remarkable experience. The Egerton Center is about building community. This was an opportunity to get MIT community together to observe this thing, which rarely happens, and have conversations on what's really going on. Thanks.
Thank you. Looks like the event was a big hit. Yeah. That's awesome. Next we have Sal.
Oh.
Do you have a pointer by some chance?
I do. This, it's hard to see, but there's a bottom button, and that will shoot a laser.
Okay, got it.
Just at the screen. Watch out for people's eyes.
All right, so I was supposed to go up to Burlington, Vermont, but my plan with myself, I've seen 5 total eclipses. I wanted to go to a place that was forecast to have really clear skies because I wanted to do out of Corona. So I backed out the night before. I've been in therapy ever since. So anyway, this is a picture that I believe was taken by the International Space Station. There's the shadow of the moon on the Earth. There's the St. Lawrence Seaway, and here's the map of what you're looking at here. You see this cloud bank right here? This is going right through Burlington, Vermont, is right there. The same cloud bank went right into Massachusetts where I observed the eclipse. So I was literally looking through the same set of clouds. And you notice, east of this, it's beautiful. So this is right up, this is right over Maine where it was perfect. Wow, it was just the opposite of what they predicted. So anyway, so there it is. So let's just go to, so I stayed home and I just took pictures of the partial phases. So, next slide. Okay. So, so here's my setup. Very simple. And by the way, I'm looking through, high thin clouds here. My setup was a Beta solar film neutral density 5 filter that I mounted in a cardboard frame. And here is a 3D printed flange that goes right onto the front of my telescope. And by the way, I've had help from the people in the club. So I can't say enough about the help I get from this club. I'm a newbie with astrophotography, but I've been in the club since 1967. And I have taken pictures of people in the club. I only started looking at the sky in 2020 when the pandemic happened. So here's my scope. It's a Celestron Nexstar C6. Is the camera on the back. Is my laptop. And these are my, I'm sorry. So these are my partial eclipse pictures. And again, I'm a newbie. This is 1,000 frames per capture, but I'm using 500 frames. They're stacked using a program called Fire Capture, which I use for planetary astrophotography. So I live in the city. I'm in Bortle 8-9 skies. So far, I don't have to worry about looking at the sun yet. The light pollution hasn't affected that. So, but, you know, look at the detail. And this is me, and I know nothing about this stuff, and this stuff is easy. It's
Sal, you've
not,
been saying that for 5 years. You've been saying you're a newbie for 5 years. When do you not become a newbie anymore?
I don't know. All right, so, you know, here's before the eclipse, and then I rotated the camera 90 degrees to get this shot. Whoops, I keep hitting the wrong button here. Okay, so that's as much coverage. My wife was there, we enjoyed it, and the therapy sessions are going fine. More than anything, I want to say thanks for all the help that I've gotten from this club. Without the help, I used to say that I didn't like the partial phases, and now I'm kind of forced to say that I like them now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. Some incredible detail.
Nice. Gotta clean the bugs off the front of those little spots.
Hey, look at the sun, if you can, look at the sun, if there's any clear skies this weekend. There's an amazing sunspot
So
group.
you do left, right space, or up and down on this guy with the laser.
Wow, okay. Oh, that was the finale. We'll come back to it. Hi, everyone, nice to be here tonight. Let's see, so this was my second eclipse. I went to 2017, I went to Glendale, Wyoming, which was a great trip. But I think from there I learned that the hardest thing was trying to get a good polar alignment in the day. And so I think what I did this time, let's see. So there's my rig. A modest 65 millimeter scope with a Nikon D7100 on the back. I was going to try and I've got a Sigma lens with a little video on top of that, piggybacked on it, that I was going to try and do some solar tracking with. And as you probably know, if you were in Boston, there was absolutely no sun the entire week before the eclipse to sort of get the rig to work out. So I never did get that to work, but I did use this great app, it's Polar Align Pro. Yep, the one I just wrote about in the. Yeah, I think Nico had written about it, and I saw it, and I went and I grabbed it like the night before, and I took it there, and man, that sun did not move. And it's a really neat app. If you haven't seen it, it knows where the North Star is during the day, and you just put it on your mount, and you move the knobs until the little X goes into the. It's amazing. It's amazing, and it really gave me a great polar alignment. I used Eclipse Orchestrator. I don't know if you're familiar with Eclipse Orchestrator, but that's a program that I've got a little GPS chip there, a little GPS receiver there. Knows exactly where it is. I programmed it in advance to tell it what kind of program I wanted to do, and it just knows where it's at. It knows exactly what's going to happen during the eclipse. And I set it up in advance to take a full series from start to finish. It tells you when to take the filters off, when to put them on, and allows you to get to change your exposures, and like during totality to get a multiple series of, say, 1/8 thousandths up to 3 seconds with my ISO 100. So I have a series of those, and I think I've got about 5 or 6 of those full series that I used. Knows when the prominences are, knows when. So I can't take credit for that other than getting it to work. It's a little bit tricky if it doesn't play well with other programs. So you got to kind of make it work. But so that's the rig, and it's on an ATX mount, tracking it solar. So it turns out that I wasn't, we planned and God laughs. So my granddaughter is 2 years old on April 8th, 2024. So I was not gonna miss the second birthday party. No way. So it turns out that the birthday party was gonna be on Sunday, the 7th. So I didn't make plans to go to Texas. I would have, just as I had made plans to go to Wyoming back in 2017. So it was all play it by ear. I was looking at the map, I was looking at the weather, and Burlington was on my target. I was gonna run up there. Came back from the party on the 7th and looked at Clear Sky chart, looked at Holton, Maine, and it was just blue across the entire chart. I said, I'm going to Holton, Maine. So, and this was in the afternoon, the day before, so I went on hotels.com, and lo and behold, I got a hotel room in Bangor. So I ran up to Bangor, stayed overnight, and then first thing in the morning, ran up to Holton, Maine. I didn't see more than 4 cars on the road the entire trip, once I hit Maine. It was amazing. Coming back, another story. But Holton was kind of empty. So it was an amazing trip, and who would have planned for Holton, Maine a year ago? Nobody. So maybe that explains the, let's see. Okay, so there's diamond ring on the way in. Yeah, that's the less prominent prominence with just the edge of the Bailey's beads coming on. And actually, does this have the other ones also? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll come back to that one. There's the Bailey's beads on the prominences on the out, the third contact. Another diamond ring.
Very nice.
So if I come back to that one, I'm sorry, I know I overdid the earth shine, but I couldn't help it. I had like, I think that came from the 3 sec. This is a 8 layers. Everything from 1/8,000th down to 3 seconds, and the 3 seconds was the earth shine that I pulled out. I used Photoshop. I used the smart object, and basically brought in layers and combined them with means. And what I did was I stacked the layers, and before I stacked them, I went in each layer and I used camera raw to sort of pull out some of the stuff. And the clarity sliders were really good to bring out some of the details in the corona. And then on the earth shine, I couldn't help myself. It was there. I just.
Well captured.
Mario, I don't know if you recognize that object, that's the moon.
So
that's it.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Rich.
While the next week comes up, daytime polar alignment is not that difficult. Get a compass, okay?
In there.
Look up wherever you are, the magnetic deflection at that location. Okay, for Texas, it was 3 degrees. And you'll be within a half a degree of polar alignment. That alone.
There's an app for that.
When your batteries go out in your compass.
So our next speaker is Al.
Okay, wait a second.
So my iPhone's like a compass, and it doesn't need it, it knows where
Yep, we hear you.
it really is. Telling you, this is up.
So as we found out, I went to Texas. And in Texas, everything's big. Everything's big in Texas. So, as we've heard, that Texas got a little clouds, so what I've done is a little vignette about Texas. So first, of course, Texas is big. They got big stars. They got big skies. They got big barbecue. They got big oil. Unfortunately, they also have big clouds. So I didn't have a picture of my setup. I didn't want to have too many pictures. So what I did is I had 5 cameras. Included with that was 1 cell phone. And on tripods, equatorial track mounts, I had stacked telescopes. As it turned out, I had 3 computers to do automation. So 1 computer crashed. I mean, it's dead. I don't know what happened. I think the hard drive died. And of course, one was taking a wide-angle shot. It was automated. They're all automated. Unfortunately, it was all the clouds, so I didn't see anything. So it was all washed out. So the only 2 the 2 things I did that actually came out. One was a 66 millimeter with a T1i running in movie mode. The other was my cell phone. Actually, the cell phone I'm wearing right here. It was taking a movie of the ground, so of all the scenes around. And so that's what I did. I took a picture of the scene. Let's hope this works. It's a video. It's about 2 minutes long. Now, I don't know if there's, so there's no sound in this, I guess?
It's very complicated.
We may have to mute the stream to get the sound to come through.
Is there any sound relative?
We get echo with video sound.
Video. Eclipse of Earth. We have an eclipse.
The bridge came on.
And bats came
All right, so lights on the bridge came on, and it was, so this is about, it got much darker. You couldn't even see, the controls on the computers, and you can actually see the horizon where you can see where it's starting to brighten up again.
Al, was that you with unfiltered binoculars?
It is, yep. And you can actually see the corona. You can see in the few seconds, and I'll show you, I have a video that will show this. It will show the few seconds of totality that we had. Yeah, so let's move to the second photo. So here it is. Now we have totality. This is the few seconds of totality that we saw. And you can actually see, and it's hard to see, but you can see the prominence. You can actually see it naked eye.
Right. Very, very nice. Very cool.
And there was another few seconds later on, about maybe 5 or 6 seconds later, but it went away.
We were right near you, and we had 3 periods when we could see the corona. But that, just that little bit.
And so the next shot, here is a screen capture of one of the video. That's next.
You have a search bar that popped up, it's getting in the way.
Love it.
Okay, this is just a screen capture. And you can, so it doesn't show, so you can see on the very top, you can see the 2 prominences. So again, this is not processed, this is just a capture. So hopefully if I get any time at all in the next few weeks, maybe I can start processing and eke out a little more details.
That's very interesting, by the way. Look at the colors in the place where the cloud intersects the corona.
Yeah, so most of it is clouds and corona, it's a combined.
Look at that, the colors.
I think a lot of that is noise.
Yeah, it is a lot of noise because this is a video. It's not a still.
It's color noise. If you stack some of them, I think that will go away.
Okay. Anyway, that's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Al. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Next up will be Michael Toops. So you can either left, right on the arrows or up, down on these arrows.
Is there a laser pointer or?
The bottom button is a laser pointer. Hard to see.
All right, so title is Eclipse from Barksdale, Texas, the best laid plans of mice and men. All right, so planning. I started planning in April 2022. Started searching up and down the map. First thing I did was look at the, this problem. Started looking at dark sky map, search along the eclipse line, found out there was a place called Barksdale, and there's a place there that's called the Mountain View Lodge, and it was available on Verbo. And it looked like it's probably Bordeaux 1, 2, 2+, depending on what you believe. This is Leakey, this is Camp Wood, which I guess is an incorporated area of like 500 people, which is lit up like a Christmas tree at night. There's a little bit of lights in Barksdale, which is unincorporated. This, of course, is San Antonio. Uvalde is down here somewhere. So I've picked an area. Well, I'd like to get a place that is dark sky. I'm going to drive down there. Want something near the eclipse center line. Of course, we all did the weather calculations, looked at the climate. This was going to be the place to be. And I have relatives in Texas and Louisiana, so I found the Verbo. It had rooms. We ended up with sleeping 12 people at the place. Got it 2 years in advance. When I tried reserving it, the owner came back to me and said, "Do you really mean 2024? I said, yes, there's a total solar eclipse going right over that place, your place at that time. He said, the reply I got back in emails, oh, cool. And so the center line was like going directly through Rio Frio, and you're just a little bit off the center line. And so he came back with cool. Of course, everybody having all the troubles with the hotels, the cancellations, and people trying to get more money out of you. I was a little nervous until I got till a week or two before, but I was pretty confident about the owner because I'd had several interactions with him. I asked him, are there any lights at the place? And he says they can't be turned off. And he goes, oh, no, but the neighbor next door has one bulb over his door. If you ask him to go unscrew it, if he's not there, just go unscrew it. Turns out it was on the other side of the building, and you didn't even know it was there. There were no lights around. So I wanted to drive down so I could take my equipment. And so this is a road trip. So we made several stops on the way down. We took 5 days to get down. We stopped in Steamtown, Scranton, Pennsylvania, which we've done before. Visited the Strasburg Railroad in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. If you haven't been by the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, this is a multi-day exhibit. I had been there several years ago, or maybe too many years ago. It turns out that one of the things they've done is they've built another big hangar wing where they have the old versions of Air Force One, dating back to the one that took, was it Roosevelt to Malta? And you can go tour those. So if you haven't been to there, that's a place worth visiting. And so it's 33 hours from Boxborough to the Verbo. We added another 6 hours to take a detour to go see the McDonald's Observatory. They actually had a star party the night we were there, which would have been the Thursday night before the eclipse. They got this great amphitheater. There was a nice large crowd, but there was too large a crowd for the number of available scopes. I actually think we do a better job with the star party than they did. Though one of the nice things, while at the amphitheater, I did bring my binoculars, and you could see the comet that was setting at that point in time while they were talking about other things. Took a tour, getting to see the Hobie Aberle telescope and the Harlan J. Smith telescope. And then we stayed around for some solar viewing, but that was all virtual. I probably would have done better off going to the Mountain View Lodge in Barstow set up for the night before.
Excuse me, could I just point out real quick?
Oh, sure, please.
This right here is the Astronomer's Lodge.
Yes.
So that's where we hope to stay next year.
And so anyway, so we're gonna do this. So we had 5 days reserved at the Mountain View Lodge in Barksdale. And then actually killing a lot of birds with one stone. It turns out my high school is having its 45th reunion during that following weekend. So this was a big trip. So climate's what we expect, weather's what we get, Mark Twain. Turns out, unlike some of the people in Texas, well, first thing the night before, we're looking at the weather forecast, 100% overcast, 90% overcast. This is not looking good. Life goes, well, can't we go somewhere else? Well, the first clear skies would have been Arkansas, at least 8 to 10 hour drive away. So we decided, we'll just play it by ear. So here is, before the eclipse, we're actually, I don't know if we're clipping off there. During it, we could actually see the eclipse. There's lots of high cirrus clouds. There were two or three stretches where it was underneath dark low clouds. So there were dark low clouds. The skies were about 80% covered. But we were doing pretty good about seeing things. And if you look very carefully, there it is. It's going completely total. This is where some of us utter some expletives and keywords and keep looking up at the sky. Wait a minute, maybe I see something here. Well, let's see, I think there's something there. In fact, this is, it's getting better, all these photos I'm showing on for this stuff was with just a 180 millimeter prime lens, cropped, handheld. That was the lens I trusted the most for doing this. I should mention that because of the amount of clouds, there were times you actually did unfiltered shots of the sun during the partial phase because it was in that dense a cloud. So it's doing a little better. Hey, now we've got something here. Again, this is a handheld from a 180 millimeter lens with just cropped image. And then finally, and it stayed pretty much visible the entire, after it was, for about 15 or 20 seconds, it was completely clouded over, and then it started becoming more and more visible, and stayed that way through the end of the thing. We get to the Bailey's beads. And so, we were staying at the Mountain View Lodge. In fact, people were looking for a place to go in the Texas area. So here's the lodge. It actually is overlooking a river. There's a swimming hole in the river. Turns out you can't see too well. There's there's 20 acres of pasture land. He has a donkey and some goats and rams in there. This is actually just an unguided shot with, I believe, an 18 millimeter lens. 5 seconds of the Orion Nebula, which was a beautiful, visible to the naked eye object there, and
That's not, huh? Where's the nebula? Oh, it's down by the belt, below the belt.
Yeah.
Here's the,
Oh, good. Okay.
here's the sword. And so you can see, that was like a 5-second exposure, 18mm lens cropped a little bit. No processing, no nothing. None of these images have been processed yet or anything. But it's really a nice dark sky sight. And so, you know, in spite of the horrible forecasts, we actually had a very good experience. One member of our party basically said, well, the clouds made it more exciting, so she had to pay attention to when it came out. The good news was, like in the 2017 eclipse, we had good luck with actually seeing things. We were in Chester, Illinois, which turned out to be the place to be as opposed to Carbondale. So these are two eclipse tricks that we sort of lucked out on. This was an experience and not a data collection exercise. We planned 2 years in advance, but you know, best laid plans mice and men. I will state that the dark skies in the hill country of Texas are very impressive, but the weather did not allow me to get much observing time in. And we're able to get the relatives out to visit. We had 12 people stay at the eclipse, and then got to visit more people on the way back home. So that's the road trip story. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we have Doug Paul. So you can go left, right on here, or up and down on this guy microphone, and I'll have a timer on the phone. Maybe the down button.
Oh, the down button.
For whatever reason.
Okay. I went with Kathy and Sean Keller. We were originally scheduled to join the group in Texas, but we turned back in Virginia and regrouped and took a day trip up to Newport, Vermont. I ran 3 cameras, a totality camera shooting 7-shot brackets covering 9 stops every 6 seconds. Should have been 12 stops, but it still worked out. An end-to-end time-lapse camera with a sun filter, 1 shot every 30 seconds. And those 2 cameras were on a motorized mount. And I also ran a flash spectrum video camera. By the time of the eclipse, a clear sky had turned into a thin overcast, and I'll surprise you with the drive home was a little slow. Let's start with a C2 sliver. Next. Some Bailey's beads. And then this is a pre-C3 corona with the prominence. That was an extremely bright prominence. And this is how I remembered the corona visually. There will be an enhanced image later. This is essentially at the same time showing the prominences. Next. Okay, the C3 diamond ring. And the 3C C3 sliver. Next. And this is the enhanced mid-totality HDR. And this is certainly shows a lot more detail than I remember seeing.
What's causing the red color?
I'm sorry?
What's causing the red color at the edges?
The projector.
Oh.
It looks a bit better up high.
Okay. I wrote the enhancement software to do this. So, next. And this is a flash spectrum, diffraction grading on the front of the camera. So, in this case, you have the sun there and the spectrum over here, and these bright spots here are Bailey's beads. This was planned in collaboration with Kerry Lynn. Kerry contacted some professionals who had taken images like this to measure the diameter of the sun. So we had some help from them in doing it. Luca Quaglia et al. And there's a reference to his paper, which some of you may find interesting to read. We also followed his guidelines for exposure. So I now have two videos. One is the end-to-end eclipse. Okay, that's about 240 times real time.
30 seconds, you said?
30-second exposures. This is running at 8 frames a second. And when we go into totality, it will be, watch quickly here, okay? This is now 48 times real time, and you can see the clouds.
Let's go back for you, see it again.
Yeah.
If people want, sure.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, go back to the start. By the way, these videos are on my website, so if you want to watch them there, you can.
Still not sure how projectors can start that.
Okay, that's past totality. Can you restart that from the beginning?
Sure.
Okay, there we go.
Very nice.
This was shot with, this is actually a combination of the two cameras, the time lapse for this portion and then the bracket camera for the totality. That's about 35 separate images.
You were so fortunate that you had clear skies throughout the whole thing.
Well, we had thin overcast, but it doesn't show except during totality. The next video is okay, well, when we get to the next video, that's all right. This is real time of the flash spectrum. And if I had, it's only C3, if I had C2 and C3, they would have been able to measure the diameter of the sun. So here are the Bailey speeds again, and you'll see these, this is the helium line, and you'll see it lengthen as a little more gets exposed.
But notice the shaft kind of going through, that's actually, the photosphere showing through the lunar valley. And as the video progresses, you see more and more lines. As the sun uncovers, as the moon uncovers the sun, you're going from the lighter elements in the upper atmosphere to the heavier elements. So play that again and just watch for those lines that show up.
Again, this is on the website if you want to dissect it. I submitted this to the professionals, and they could see the various layers of the sun as it progressed. Unfortunately, due to an operator error, I missed C2.
So watch for the additional lines that will show.
Yeah, they'll appear in here. You can see some greens beginning to appear.
Now you're seeing the heavier elements.
Nice. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And this was shot with the Canon RA, which has extended red sensitivity, so that that's the hydrogen line, of course, so it's going at a distance past the hydrogen line. So that's it.
Great.
Thank you, Doug. I think we'll have all the speakers come up to the front and we'll get a nice picture of everybody together.
Press. You can take some of the pictures. There you go. Yeah, take that one. And also take the second one, after you take a couple shots, take one with that also.
You have to turn sideways.
May I have a few of the other comments?
Yeah, we're still not done after this.
I'm still not scared.
Stand sideways.
There's more to come.
Stand sideways.
Just in case.
That's the most reliable thing here.
The real answer, okay.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Thank you for speaking. We have one last little.
You said something about Young's. So I Googled it. And it's something to do with
Corey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we have one little last thing left, which is for anyone who didn't get to present today, they had a chance to send in a couple photos. So we'll quickly go through these photos that everyone had sent in. So Mark Henry actually had a really interesting opportunity. He's a commercial pilot.
Bruce, sit down. Sit down.
He actually rented a Piper Arrow, flew it up to totality, and got some pictures. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here today, but he had some spectacular pictures from that. So this is about 6,500 feet up over Vermont. Just wild. You can see the shadow there.
Well, it's trying to be,
Keith Florent took a picture of his kit. He also included a can of vegetables for a counterweight, and it worked out very well for him. He got some fantastic pictures. So there's some beautiful structure in the Corona, or the yeah, just fantastic pictures. And we have a couple pictures by Chris Ellich, who's in Little Rock, Arkansas, using a Canon with lens. Beautiful sort of atmospheric picture showing the surroundings.
That's the house I grew up in.
Oh, that's awesome. And then another beautiful shot of the Corona. Next, Kai Kai sent some pictures from Bloomington, Indiana. He's got a nice projection there. And he also took some iPhone pictures. And then Venu Gopal sent pictures from Holton. Yeah, that looks like fun. He sent some pictures from Holton, and he actually got interviewed by the local news, and he sent a video out on Discuss, which is very, very well produced video. And he also got some excellent shots himself. And Carrie Lynn was the sort of reciprocal part of that spectral experiment, and this is his picture of the spectrum that he produced with a 300 line per millimeter diffraction grating.
It's we saw it in Kerrville.
Yeah, that's also Kerrville, I believe.
Brady, Texas.
Oh, sorry.
Terry, do you own that town?
Jerry Sussman, just before the meeting, brought some pictures forward of his eclipse viewing in Rangeley, Maine.
No processing.
It's very nice. You can see the diffraction from the shutter. I think it's a very cool effect. Or the iris, my bad. And I had guessed at the wrong name. Sorry. But these were beautiful sketches by Elizabeth of leading up to totality, and even some of totality, which are just very striking and impressive.
Like the prominence.
Yeah, the little speck of color, that was beautiful naked eye. So that really captures the essence of it. And Alva also provided some pictures, and it looks like he had set up an Insta360 camera. So it's on a large pole over his observing site, and we actually have a time lapse. We'll let that run out as we close the meeting. So we'll get this going, and this is a really beautiful time lapse, wide angle. You can see the shadow coming, and it's just sort of, you know, smoothly, gradually coming over, and you can see that great big dark spot coming your way. This is just a phenomenal time lapse.
Actually, it's real time.
Oh,
It's
excellent.
it isn't
Not time
compressed, it's real time. This is how fast it actually looks.
Great horizon to capture this on. Really wide and low.
And then just because I had a 360 camera, I had a horizon. I had a horizon.
Nice. Bruce, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, could we have, and since it's hard to see remotely, but raise your hands in the room if you actually got to see totality, and raise your hand online. And could you just do a count and figure out about how many of our present members were able to see it?
Looks between 60 and 70% in the room. And maybe we can do a poll on the website or something.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Wait a second, wait a second. Keep your hand raised. Okay.
Online. So with that, I'll officially close the meeting. Our next meeting will be June 13th, 8 o'clock. See you there. Thank you all, and thanks everyone for presenting and everyone.